Very warm good afternoon once again to all the ladies and gentlemen present here. And now we move on to the round table 4. The topic is technology and innovation. Technology and seniors is AgeTech for real. Technology is something we usually associated with the young, yet technology has the potential to transform the lives of seniors. Digital products and platforms can be tailored to meet the needs of older people. Technology that improves health monitoring and care can allow seniors to age from home. And data in technology can keep seniors connected with their caregivers seamlessly. How much of AgeTech is hype versus reality? We are exhilarated to unveil the panel for our discussion, so please help me in welcoming on stage our moderator, Mrinalini Mirchandani, Senior Partner, McKinsey & Company, to kindly take over the stage. And also, let's welcome the panelists with the biggest round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give it up to Ayush Agrawal, CEO, Kubo, to join us. Mr. Ganapathy, GR, CEO, Machani, Robotics. Mr. Rohit, MA, Managing Partner, PeerCapital, Founder, Cloud9. And Ms. Femada, Shamam, CEO, the Association for Aging, TAFTA, Durban, South Africa, to kindly join us, please.
Hi, folks. We were unlucky to get the post-lunch session, but very lucky to get the most exciting topic. So we are in Bangalore. How could we not talk about technology? Having said that, I think technology and seniors are not words that often go together. Basically, I think because of a bunch of biases and beliefs around how a group of people who weren't digitally native growing up actually behave. This panel thinks differently, and my hope is in the next half hour they will provoke all of us to think a little bit differently about technology and seniors. So let me first quickly introduce this group before we jump into questions. We're very lucky to have with us Femada, 25 years of helping seniors in Africa age with dignity. What a wonderful person to have on this panel. And in that journey has also seen many entrepreneurs innovate and seen how innovation has evolved. We'll come to that in a bit. Very special day for Ayush. Guys, a big round of applause. It's launch day for Kubo today, his startup. So Ayush, double reasons to celebrate. Also, Ayush was the founder of the first e-commerce company for seniors in India, Seniority. First and only, I think. And since, yeah. Kubo is now building a radar technology for senior fall prevention or detection. Very excited to have Rohit. Rohit did not start his career with seniors, he started with babies. He was founder of Cloud9 and then having built an incredibly successful business, turned investor. When we spoke, he told me one big theme he's going after is AgeTech. So Rohit brings the investor view to why technology is relevant. And then Ganapathy, when he told me what Machani Robotics does, I was wondering whether it's science fiction or reality. But there is a humanoid that helps seniors deal with companionship, challenges, care, and more. So a fascinating panel, which is why I will stop talking and turn over to them. Let me begin with one question for each of you, which is, and Ayush, I'll start with you. A lot about, when we talk about technology, we talk about the future. If I was to say here and now, where are you seeing opportunities for technology to change how seniors age? Tell us a bit more.
Right. Thank you so much, Mrinalini. Right, so technology and seniors, for an India-specific view, is that one error I feel that we've made as a country of cheap labor is assumed that manpower can replace technology in every single aspect. I think increasingly we are realizing that's not the case. As our demographic dividend flips, as India becomes an aging country and an old country, we'll realize increasingly that technology is extremely relevant and extremely important. I would sort of also do a shameless plug here that what we are also trying to do is that, right? Trying to bring sort of this global technology of sort of radar-based, non-wearable, non-camera, sort of ensuring that a senior is healthy, safe within their own confines. I think that in general is going to be a big theme. Like for us to be able to say that, are we able to sort of just automate as much as possible and reduce the dependence on manpower to the extent possible. Of course, some cases you can't, but even there you would want to augment the manpower with technology and replace wherever possible. That, in my view, is a big theme that we should look at for seniors and technology.
What exactly does Kubo do?
So we are building radar-based devices that are able to track a person's movement, detect falls, and also be able to sort of do gait analysis, balance views, so that we can actually also talk about whether a person is deteriorating over time. So we want to be able to sort of get to a stage where we are not just detecting falls, but also predicting and preventing them from taking place. Just sort of all of this data that we are able to collect, including say things like a timed up and go test, tossing and turning, sleep quality, heart rate, respiratory rate, put all of that together and sort of be predictive about deterioration rather than being reactive about it.
Genuinely something humans could not do. So, terrific. I'm going to move on to Ganapathy. Ganapathy, tell us a bit about Ria. And when you told me she's a humanoid, I was Googling on the site saying like, okay, what exactly is that? So please educate us about Ria the humanoid and how she's helping seniors.
Thank you, Mrinalini. I know how many of you have had a chance to look at video of Ria. But otherwise, look, Ria, when we say humanoid, it's a robot that looks like a human. I think, look, many of you who are associated with elder care would kind of appreciate that elder care requires, if anything, infinite patience, compassion, rigor, everything to kind of deal with it. And, we think that the humanoid is best placed to do that because so long as you've plugged the humanoid, there's electricity, it can work 24 hours, has infinite patience. So Ria, for example, Ria has 34 degrees of freedom when it comes to the face. So from a facial expression perspective, and she has obviously computer vision, speech recognition kind of driving a lot of that technology, which makes her essentially very empathetic. She's able to understand a context from an emotional perspective and connect. Right, and then what that does, and we are in fact currently doing some of the POCs with, there's one happening in San Diego University where essentially we're testing in terms of how loneliness is again a big issue that you have. And in fact, there are studies that say that look, people who are lonely, there's a 3 to 5 year lifespan that gets sucked out of them. And one of the things that we are seeing is because, how Ria can step into that role and then empathize, communicate and connect with people. And that's essentially what Ria does. So unlike, many of the robots that we're familiar with, which is essentially picking stuff for industrial use case, I think we took a big bet on the compassion and the social use case. Yeah. And that's what Ria does.
I'm still wrapping my head around compassionate robots, but I'll get there. Femada, necessity is often the mother of invention, right? And you would have seen through the years, countries like India and Africa don't always have the resources to drive change, but that's what innovation comes from. As you've looked at all these incubators through the years, where are you seeing technology play a role?
Thank you so much. Firstly, let me just say how honored I feel to be part of this discussion and very humbled to be in this room of brilliant minds. So I think, there's some comparatives in terms of Africa and India, in terms of being emerging economies, and from a rural, urban perspective, there's some similarities as well. I think in Africa, possibly what's different is that the innovation is within the space of your normal living, if I can call it that. So we're seeing innovation happening as it relates to the circumstances that older people find themselves in. For example, in Durban, we've been impacted quite a lot by climate change. We've had flooding that's happened. And so part of the challenge then is to look at solutions for older people within the context of climate change and how that impacts. So while you have the sort of directed, focused innovation around care, support, technologies that will assist older people, there are also these broader societal issues that we are mainstreaming and ensuring that the focus is on older persons as well. So innovation is happening within the context of larger social issues.
Got it. I think something you said outside, which was, the goal is to change the way people feel about aging.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, as an organization working with older persons, we've become quite used to older people being marginalized. But also when you say to someone, I work in the older person sector, I immediately see the pity on their face, like, oh, shame, it's not the most sexiest of sectors to be in. However, we want to change the narrative on aging. Aging provides a whole lot of opportunities for all different groups of people, younger people, older people themselves as well. So yes, part of our drive is to look at the way we change the narrative of aging. And in doing so, we actually are then combating the whole ageism issue. Because when we start discriminating on people on the basis of their age, then it means we reduce the opportunities they have for living a life of well-being, living a life of inclusivity and all the rest of it.
Thank you. Rohit, on to you with an investor hat. This morning when we spoke, we heard the investor panel. Inevitably, investments in this space ends up being largely real estate driven. When you say AgeTech and when your thesis around AgeTech is being built, where is the investable tech-led opportunity?
Yeah, again, thanks for having me here and good afternoon, everyone. Look, the problem of being an investor is you always follow things, right? You cannot really go and soothsay some of the things. I know there are some people who do it, but I'm here to learn and actually kind of appreciate what all the founders are doing. But I think in terms of investing in senior tech itself is especially in terms of there's so many different frameworks that is currently floating. And this is what we are also trying to figure out ourselves and working with founders like many of them in the room. Is one, if it is something for our country in terms of, what's the diverse population, a lot of them don't even realize that the kind of aging population which is south of India and rest of India is very different. The propensity to pay, the number of pensioners, the kind of income that they have, all of those things actually come into play in terms of saying what is it that you're really building for, right? Like technology is one layer, but just in terms of all those aspects, there's so many different combinations of what you can actually build. Technology somehow doesn't seem to be one uniform lateral sort of thing that can be provided in this space, especially because someone who's 50 today is probably the most well-versed in terms of using tech of what is around because they've grown up with it, right? Or someone who's like me in 40s have actually, completely kind of embodied technology as it's happened. And we are going to step into the zone where, we start becoming senior. And how do you address using technology of what is today and what is for someone who's already there, right? So I think technology in itself is like a complex sort of thing, and that's what we are also trying to find. But I think the first thing, like you said, reality is the one thing which has actually gone ahead and leapfrog, which is good because, across several paradigms between emotional, mental, physical, financial, this is where we are seeing in terms of playbooks being built. Real estate or reality is something which cuts across all of these nicely, right? So that's one thing which is leapfrog. But in terms of other things, I think anything on the preventive side, like what these guys are building, anything which is more on the diagnostic or preventative in nature, I think is probably seeing a little bit more action, either being device-oriented or non-device oriented. We're seeing a lot of action. I think financial, there are some playbooks being built thanks to the amazing financial rails that are there in our country. We don't know if it is replicable in most other countries, but this is what is happening, and we're also seeing a good amount of tech being used in its traditional way where people are sitting here in India using the cost arbitrage to find and help senior care globally, right? For ones who are building globally, there are ACOs which kind of do a great job of managing clinical outcomes in pools across the US, and it's all paid by one payer, which is the insurer. So there's a lot of players who are actually kind of helping them closely monitor using devices, using interaction to actually be able to bring the cost of care down and actually prevent hospitalization. So there's several of these things, and I don't know if I answered your question, but there's like a lot happening.
No, you did, because we started with two examples of tech products, right? Whether it's Kubo or RIA. It's interesting that both of you spoke about tech as an enabler as much as tech as the end product. Great. Moving on to the next question, before this event, we did a survey that Rajat referred to this morning, where we had 500 seniors surveyed. One of the questions was around how do they engage with their smartphones. What we expected and surely heard back is they obviously communicate, they consume content on WhatsApp. One of the results was that more than 50% shop with their phone. And when I saw that, I asked the team to check the data, saying, are you sure, right? People are transacting on their phone, 60 plus, 70 plus. But it made me realize the number of myths that are prevalent in our heads. Ayush, I'd like to come to you. When you started seniority, firstly, I'd love to know how many people told you were nuts. But what were some of the myths that got shattered when you sold online to people who are not seen as being digital transactors?
Right. So, I would actually take a step back and say that it's not just a myth. I believe seniors have actually been gaslit into sort of just thinking that they're not tech savvy. So when we started seniority, we were at this event in Pune with approximately 150 or so seniors. And this is back in 2016, right? So the question was, how many of you consider yourselves tech savvy, right? And maybe 3 or 4 hands went up. But then you ask them probing questions, how many of you are on Facebook? That's like 60, 70 hands going up. How many of you are on WhatsApp? That's like 100, 120 hands going up, right? And when you probe deeper, you realize they have smartphones. They are on the internet. They're using apps. But for some reason, they've been led to believe that they're not tech savvy, right? The problem is not that they're not tech savvy. They are tech savvy. It's the tech that's not meeting their needs, right? That's one of the reasons why we started Kubo Care as well. When you talk about fault detection, right, you say that, hey, you know what, but wearables exist, right? Wearables can detect faults. Why not wearables? But wearables do not meet the needs of a senior. The senior does not like the feel of a wearable on their body at all times. They don't like to have to remember to recharge it, right? They don't like to have to remember to wear it every single day. If that is their preference, we can't call them as being not tech savvy for choosing to reject a wearable. It is our job to build technology that works as per their preferences, to build an ambient device that is tracking them and protecting them without for them having to change their habits, right? So, and that's what we did with seniority as well. That when they talked about how, we're comfortable with WhatsApp, we're comfortable with Facebook, but Amazon is a bridge too far. It's too complicated. So we met them halfway. We created a website that was simpler to use. We created a platform that allowed them to chat with us on WhatsApp. Call us directly, no confusing IVR flows to sort of confuse them. Ask questions about products. You can't expect them to read detailed product descriptions and sort of understand the nuance about the 5 different types of wheelchairs that exist and which is the right one for them. We were there to handhold them through the process. And as a result, we were surprised. When we started, even we were making this mistake. We were going to launch a bunch of retail stores for seniors to shop and the website for the kids to shop for the parents. But with the right interventions on the website, we actually dropped our offline store idea almost altogether. 95% of our sales were online, and of that, almost 35 to 40% was seniors buying themselves. So if you are willing to create technology for seniors, seniors are not, you cannot consider them as being not tech savvy. They're just as tech savvy as the rest of us. The technology has to work for them. We can't force them to fit into our notions of what technology is.
That is fascinating, and for me, the line I'm going to take over is we are gaslighting seniors by telling them that they are not tech savvy. Ganapathy, tell us about RIA, right? Again, my biases. I'm imagining a senior looking at a robot to engage for companionship. Is there no reservation? Are there myths that are being shattered there as well, where they are prepared to engage with humanoids?
Sure. I think before that, look, looking at my own family, I'm not surprised by the results that you've got because, my mother has taken to online banking, so I can't imagine that, that's something that I don't think is outlandish. But coming back to RIA specifically, look, we had a very interesting instance in the US again, of course, because we kind of most of the use cases are there. So we had, a founder of a large organization who's looking at RIA. And as a test case, he invited his dad, dad who's alone, to kind of have a conversation with RIA. Right? The thought is, look, most of us think that, look, one, there are a lot of human beings, or otherwise we have Alexa or the equivalent. And the fact is, look, and that was the sale that finally happened because it was an engaging conversation with the dad. Because what Ria does is, look, unlike many of us who come with our own biases, she's not judgmental. And she engages, and she is constantly kind of asking you questions, so she's just not there to respond. And I think, look, it's the experience. So, so here's an instance where I think he was an 85-year-old gentleman who kind of, took to Ria in the space of, 15 minutes, right? So I think it's a question of experience, and hopefully, just like what our survey said, some of these myths will be broken as well. Yeah.
This is amazing. Rohit, if I come to you on scaling, right? As I walked around today, there are such cool ideas on display. Question is always, will they scale or will they stay cool and small? As an investor, what are some of the biggest bottlenecks you see to cool ideas becoming large?
Yeah. So look, I think for someone who built a brick and mortar business, I've kind of answered this for myself as well, is quite often I think there's confusing signals in terms of what kind of capital you need. Everybody kind of confuses venture capital to be the only way to kind of grow, right? I think it's a big misconception, because venture capital comes with a finite timeline, comes with an expectation of a hockey stick growth, comes with category creation. It comes with a lot of threads which are possibly not visible, but there. It's for someone to realize in terms of, what do you need that capital to do? Most often, if you kind of look at that capital as more as a catalyst and not the reason you exist, I think you can do well. A lot of businesses, especially in this, and look, if it's anything to do with health, if it's anything to do with this category, I actually inherently believe that if you draw down a unit level economics, you have to be able to make money at the end of it, right? In the sense, you have to have a profit in terms of what you're trying to do as a product or a service. So I think anyone who's trying to capture or retain engagement and so on without actually trying to convert that to a product or a service, I don't think that's there yet, right? So I think that is what people possibly try and chase towards, saying that, we will engage them with ABCD services, but we'll try and sell them service E. And that usually hasn't happened. But if you're good at service E, you should try and go for it, right? So there are many ways of doing it. If there's devices, can you kind of use debt as a route? Can you use other patient capital forms as a route to actually kind of go build that market for you? Because that is something when someone's doing for the first time, you have to establish that market, right? So I think that misconception is really big. I think it also needs to come from a little bit of policy as well, in terms of, let's say how the state play matters, right? In terms of dedicating some amount of capacities in the form of capital also, to say that please go build, because we're kidding ourselves to say that as a country we will not grow old. We will grow old, right? So it's sooner for us to realize that some amount of capital in terms of as big as infra, defense, manufacturing, all of that, there has to be something which is allocated to this. That's when you will see a thrust of innovation. Like, I'm sure a lot of people know here about the PLI scheme, which kind of changed the landscape of what's happened in manufacturing, right? We don't see some of those initiatives coming. So just private capital is still a very small sort of piece to kind of fit into the puzzle. So I think it has to be a bit and piece. It has to come in bits and pieces. But for the ones building, if there's a way to kind of get your consumers to pay, I think that's the best form of capital you can actually get.
So both being thoughtful about sources of capital, including through policy, and business models that ultimately have profitability inbuilt. Femada, any other perspectives from you on the unlocks to scale?
Yeah, I think definitely from the South African perspective, we see the policy issue as one of the bottlenecks, because our policies in South Africa are designed around redressing past inequalities. So there's issues around equity, and you're looking at, like, for example, broad-based black empowerment programs that's pushing that kind of equity agenda. And I think that there needs to be more that is done from an entrepreneurship perspective, especially around being more or being less risk averse. Those kinds of policies needs to have some kind of discussion. And the aging agenda is not even on the whole radar of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is seen more in terms of technologies that impact on younger people. So I think there needs to be more of that bridging of the gap as well. I think from the South African perspective, also in terms of the way we're translating aging technology, you know, we're pushing from the aging space, we're pushing the whole thing around well-being. And Andrew and I were having this conversation that it's not just about care, it's about well-being, which goes beyond the care. And well-being for us, you know, transcends in terms of different aspects from joy to autonomy to independence. So when you talk about people being on online shopping, that's an expression of their independence. So that kind of translation needs to happen. So part of the bottleneck is about having everybody at the table to innovate together, because different people bring different perspectives. You get the engineers that bring in the technical stuff, but you also have the social scientists that's bringing in the human side of it. They understand the experiences. And what we found works really well is that we bring the older people to the table as well. They are part of the design team. They talk about things that impact on them. So right at the point of ideation, they are part of that discussion. And I think that's part of the change that needs to happen as well.
An innovation ecosystem,
Yes,
essentially.
absolutely.
That's a fantastic thought. I want to hand over to the audience to ask a question, but before I do that, one last rapid fire for all of you. If I asked you to look in a fictional crystal ball and imagine 10 years out, where do you think technology would have made the maximum impact and how, by then, all of us age? Ganapathy, I start with you.
I think in 10 years, I think last rites are going to be different. We all have so much of digital data about ourselves. You know, we can all upload it. There's enough LLM that's going to come. You can have an avatar. Maybe, you know, you can rechristen Ria to hover your loud furnace and then have them continue.
I'm not sure I want to be part of this future, but okay.
I had a similar sort of concept in mind, but not as eerie. But I think so I would, if I had to look 10 years ahead, I think having a digital twin avatar in terms of, you know, all the information that we know, ultimately look, like she said, as humans, we are all creatures of habit, right? So if we start behaving the way that we are supposed to behave when we go to a certain age in terms of our, what do we consume, what do we kind of do, our lifestyle and all of those things, if there's a digital twin which can actually kind of mimic everything to show how you need to be, I think that's probably like, it's like seeing in the mirror and trying to see what you shouldn't do, right? So maybe that's something I kind of want to see.
For me, I apologize for my very blinkered views here in advance, but for me, the future 10 years down the line is the future that I'm sort of on the path of building today with the team, which is to have a setup where our seniors are able to sort of age in place with sort of the full predictive and preventive technology in force behind them, and ensuring that there are no unseen emergencies that occur, that we are able to sort of ensure that they are able to live long and fulfilling lives, and that sort of the typical decline that you see with aging is something that we are able to eliminate.
Okay, so in my future, I'm hoping to see Ria. As part of my future, I say this facetiously because I have a macaw that's named Ria. So hopefully Ria will still be part of our life. But I think also you'll see a rise in this circular economy housing. People who are coming into housing establishments now are looking for ethical business. They're looking for businesses that's mindful around the impact on the climate, on the planet. And I think with some of the older people that we're speaking to, it's beyond just the comfort that they have for themselves, but also what are they leaving for their children and their grandchildren. So I think that housing in the future needs to integrate those kinds of ethical practices, and that I will see increasing in the next 10 years.
Can't fault our panel for lack of imagination. So homes that are ethical, that are preventive focused, that allow you to age in place, digital twins that let you see every day what you should and could do, and finally, as someone I think in your city yesterday said, let's not die. So that's the, okay, super. Any questions from the audience?
See, we have enough friends on Facebook, LinkedIn, Insta, and whatnot. And now, apart from these friends, we will also have Ria. But the trouble is, the main cause of mental illnesses and loneliness is because we are become so digital. We need physical, more social, don't you think so? We need to meet real people, we need to see real faces, we need to have real friends. So somewhere I think we are losing the direction.
But unfortunately, look, given that we're not in a perfect world and we have to deal with imperfection, then perhaps, technology can help us, get as close to perfection as possible. I mean, I'm not saying that, Ria or anybody equivalent is a panacea. Is a panacea for this, but you're right. I mean, I think that's something that we need to still cherish and let it nurture. But in the absence of that, I mean, these are solutions. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Any glaring at me? Actually, two more. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe while the mic travels there.
Yeah. I'm Dharma. My question pertains to, not a question, more of a suggestion in the sense that you were looking for funding for all these, high-tech projects which are related to senior living. And what I was given to understand that out of all our IITs and which are there all over the country, the Ministry of Science and Technology possibly had actually assigned core focus areas for each of the IITs to carry out research and progress it along with a host of other partners who are there, startups and otherwise. And for example, in IIT Madras, it does focus on one of the 5 focus areas which has been assigned to IITM, pertains to assisted living and senior living in particular. And the IIT research parks have access to not just the Ministry of Science and Technology funding. Very often it has access to defense and research funding as well, R&D funding. It has access to corporate funding. It has access to alumni funding. And it has access to a host of other resources which are actually put together in one single platform. And it would be worthwhile to actually reach out to such platforms in terms of where you could get, a kind of a cluster of all the things that you actually require.
A strong division which is actually talking about a lot of these things. There are protocols being developed for like early dementia detection, right? And in a very sort of Indianized manner, which is like a set of questions and stuff. It doesn't involve any devices. It doesn't involve anything. It's just a protocol to manage. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot happening. But one of the things is, for everybody building in this space, it's very difficult to kind of come through only those institutions. So there has to be something which is more capital sort of pushed out. I'm not saying just in the form of dollars or INR being available, but at least in the form of, you do something which is good. Is there a way to kind of, do as a clawback in terms of taxation? You do something like how you have benefits for insurance, you have better rates on banks, and there has to be something more in terms of, how technology can possibly intervene. And that was the observation, not for access to what people are doing.
So there were a couple of other questions and then we'll wrap.
Hi, my name is Prakash. So I would like to understand in 2 different ways. Basically, we are in a ship with proper investment and trying to find where money is. This is that tip of an iceberg in an ocean, right? And but what about the rest of the people who are middle class and lower middle class or poor people in the elderly segment? How are we going to take that money which is lying below the ocean, which is not visible to us, right? That is one thing. Are there technologies currently being developed? Is one question. And the other question is, if we are planning to find revenue from that bottom of the pyramid, how are different agencies planning to collaborate?
Good question. So part of what we do in South Africa is to focus on different socioeconomic groups and to make products and services available to all people. We use a very collaborative approach. So when I said all stakeholders need to be at the table, it's including your funders, your donors, looking at people who will develop the technology and how we roll it out. So I think in South Africa, the solution we found in terms of accessibility is to have various role players and stakeholders as part of the conversation to look at how we can scale it and make it accessible to everybody. I'm not quite sure about the Indian context.
Actually, it's interesting, but at the start of today when Adarsh was speaking, when Nitin mentioned, a big question for him is how do developments in this space address people beyond the top 5%? And we did comment that a lot of this group is focused on that top 5%. So it's a great observation about not leaving everyone behind.
Yeah, I think when we were speaking to some of the innovators as well, because we had a youth innovation challenge, and one of the questions that we posed to the innovators was, how would you make this accessible? And they used a cross-subsidization model where they will focus on the higher economic groups, but they would look to cross-subsidize the lower groups through that, but also engaging with whatever programs are within the city, within the government, and roll the programs through those kind of structures. So I think you really have to be quite creative around what exists in your particular environment, and then use a variety of approaches to make it as accessible as possible.
Sorry, one last question. Yes,
well, it's just a comment really which complements what you've just heard. And it's interesting listening to the fascinating discussion that is being replicated on panel table stages in all around the world. The people are having these conversations and looking at how technology can, what place it has in the future. And I'm hugely impressed by what I'm hearing about what's going on in India. It is fantastic. The innovation, the entrepreneurship, the spirit that is coming from this country needs to be seen elsewhere. So let us see what we can do and how we can help you guys to connect with people who are doing similar things. And so you can spin on these ideas, really take them, you know, we're still on the early stages of how we can really understand the potential of technology and how it can affect lives. So congratulations for your conversations. Roll them out and expand your horizons. There's no real limit. One thing about technology is it doesn't need to be confined by borders.
I request all of you to kindly step forward so that we can have a group photograph. I request all of you guys to kindly step forward. Yes, everybody can step forward, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have the biggest round of applause. Thank you so much for that enriching session.